I know a lot of people want to talk about the results of the presidential election and the early projections. And again, Biden is not officially or legally or in any way the president-elect. President Trump is challenging the results. The courts are going to make a determination. Only when the courts determine the outcome can anybody talk about the president-elect or the president being reelected. It's just, that's a fact. Here was South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, who I am really, really liking more and more. Every time I hear this woman speak, every time I hear her represent the state of South Dakota, I get more inspired. Here she was with George Stephanopoulos over the weekend on ABC.
But the other thing that I think is going on here, George, is that this is all premature. This is a premature conversation because we have not finished counting votes. There are states that have not been called. And back in 2000, Al Gore was given his day in court. We should give President Trump his day in court, let the process unfold. Because, George, we live in a republic. We are a government that gets its power from the consent of the governed. That is the people. They give their consent on Election Day. Election Day needs to be fair, honest, and transparent. And we need to be sure that we had an honest election before we decide who gets to be in the White House the next 4 years.
Governor Noem, do you have any evidence that it wasn't an honest election? You put out a tweet earlier this week saying it was rigged. Do you have any evidence at all of widespread fraud? I've spoken with Republican secretaries of state in Georgia, in Arizona. I've spoken to Republican officials across the country. They have come up with zero evidence of widespread fraud.
And that is not true. That is absolutely not true. People have signed legal documents, affidavits stating that they saw illegal activities. And that is why we need to have this conversation in court. The New York Times itself said that there were clerical errors. If you look at what happened in Michigan,
fraud, Governor, that's
that we had
different.
computer glitches that changed Republican votes to Democrat votes. You look in Pennsylvania, dead people voted in Pennsylvania. So, George, I don't know how widespread it is. I don't know if it'll change the outcome of the election. But why is everybody so scared just to have a fair election and find out? We gave Al Gore 37 days to run the process before we decided who was going to be president. Why would we not afford the 70.6 million Americans that voted for President Trump the same consideration? If Joe Biden really wants to unify this country, he would wait and make sure that we can prove we had a fair election.
Wow. And there's nothing that George Stephanopoulos can really say to that. You see, here's the thing. George Stephanopoulos doesn't get to determine the outcome. The courts do. Everybody gets their day in court, and that includes Donald Trump and the Trump campaign. And they want this debate. The Stephanopoulos of the world, the media mob, they all want us to be screaming about the election, the presidential listen, the courts are going to decide that. We've got I'm not giving them what they want. You shouldn't either. Let's focus on what we know to be true. Serenity prayer. Have the courage and the wisdom to know the difference between what you can change and what you cannot. We're not judges. We're not the Supreme Court. The courts will decide. Joe, you're on the Mike Gallagher Show in the ReliefFactor.com studios. How you doing, Joe?
How you doing, Mike? I got to say something. I'm not sharing your optimistic point of view because the same problem we had in terms of the mailing ballot is still going to be present for those two Senate races. And
but there will be a spotlight on Georgia like there has never been before, Joe.
But
there will be scrutiny. Go ahead.
But there's another thing, too. I don't know. I feel like the Republican, the leadership, they don't have the backbone. Because normally they should have stood up with the president. They are not doing that. And not only that,
so you want to throw in the towel? You going to give up?
Listen, I'm feeling disappointed because I don't.
Are you going to stop fighting? Or are you going to give up? I'm just asking you directly, Joe. You want to just say, okay, they're going to cheat, so let's just give them Georgia and give them the Senate. Is that what you're going to say?
I'm not saying that, but we are not having anybody fighing for us. We don't have any leadership. Is not there. It's vacant. They're not doing anything. They're not giving us.
You wait and see where the fight is going to commence. You're wrong, Joe. What do you mean nobody's been fighting?
Listen,
Half the country's been fighting. What do you mean?
I understand, but with the leadership, the people that are in power right now, they are not giving us the willingness.
Do you know who will be in power January 6th if we let them? Chuck Schumer will be the majority leader.
the Senate. I'm talking about the Senate. For
Yeah,
example,
that's where the battle is.
okay, let me ask you a question. Why don't they? I mean, why don't they? As like they did for President Trump when he came in 2016.
Right.
Why don't
Right.
they also announce that they're going to have a special prosecutor for the Hunter Biden situation? At least that would give us something that they are fighting.
I get it. That ship has sailed. I wish 100 people would have shown up and voted for Trump, and this wouldn't have been close. Guess what? It's close. They're going to go through the courts, and we're going to fight for Georgia. You either have a defeatist attitude, and you're going to get what you project, Joe. You got to keep fighting. You've got to be willing to support those who are going to go to Georgia, like I am, and the millions of people who are going to volunteer in Georgia, the people who are going to be flooding money into PACs. They're going to fight for these two candidates. I mean, now is not the time for you to give up, Joe. Can I ask you a personal question? Can I ask you a personal question?
Just a last question.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Go ahead, yeah.
Are you a parent?
Yeah.
Do you tell your kids, "Oh, well, go home, it's over, you can't win"? Do you tell your kids to stop fighting?
No, I don't.
Then don't do that now about America, Joe.
Okay, let me just ask the last question.
Sure.
Who controls the state legislature in Georgia? Is it the Republican or is it the Democrat?
The Republican. We have a Republican Georgia, a Republican governor. You've got a Republican legislature. It's a Republican state.
So how come?
So Joe, don't stop. Again, I love you. I'm not in the mood for a defeatist attitude right now, because if you don't get what the stakes are, if you don't recognize what we're up against, maybe I won't change your mind. I know you're disappointed. I am too. It certainly isn't over, incidentally. I mean, let's listen together, Joe, to Steve Hilton on Fox News over the weekend, talking about what Democrats would be doing if the roles were reversed. If Biden had been ahead and then suddenly was trailing in 4 battleground states, the Democrats would be doing exactly what Team Trump is doing right now. Steve Hilton made that point on his show on Fox News.
And by the way, everyone knows that if the positions were reversed, every single Democrat, every Biden propagandist on CNN and NBC and everywhere else would be telling Biden to fight and fight and fight to the end. So we can do without the lectures about undermining democracy from the people who did nothing but that for 4 years with their Russia conspiracy, who tried to derail a presidency with endless investigations, pseudo-scandals, and a phony impeachment. But we can also do without false hopes being raised.
Now, exactly. And we need to do that without a sense of defeatism and without a sense of false hope. Joe, don't get me wrong. I appreciate your frustration. I appreciate you getting down. Again, as a parent, my kids would get there and I'd say, guys, now's not the time to give up.